Welcome to the Hour of Empowerment. Today we are in Season 2, Civic Education, Topic 2, Good Governance. And we're going to have 4 episodes. The first episode covers the characteristics of good governance, advantages we may enjoy when we have good governance, and consequences of lack of good governance. Episode 2 provides you examples, case studies of good governance. Episode 3 provides you what it takes to create good governance and your roles. And episode 4 brings to you panel discussion with experts. As usual, let's revise what we discussed in the last session. As you may remember, we concluded topic 1 last week. Under that topic, we talked about the term democracy, historical milestones, benefits we may enjoy when we live and operate in a democracy, and the challenges democracy is facing. We also talked about types of democracies and system of governance in this world, and also we provided you case studies with maps. We talked about how to create democracy and your roles. We had also a wonderful panel discussion with 2 great scholars, Professor David Shen from George Washington University and Professor Getachew Metaferia from Morgan State University. They helped us to understand democracy versus freedom, democracy, stability, and prosperity, the Arab Spring, what are the stumbling blocks that deny Africans democracy, and so on and so forth. Today we're going to have a new topic, which is good governance. First, let's talk about democracy versus good governance. There are some countries and organizations that are democratic but without good governance. Likewise, there are countries and organizations that demonstrate relative good governance but without democracy. However, in democracies that are well developed, they enjoy good governance. We don't expect much good governance from dictatorship and undemocratic governance. Good governance, in short, is a test of effectiveness, efficiency, fairness, and transparency of a democracy, which means having democracy by itself is not enough. Democracy should embrace good governance. Good governance creates synergy among democratic forces. It facilitates sustainable development, reduces corruption and abuse of power by leaders. It also increases participation of all the stakeholders in developmental activities, in the decision-making process, and so on and so forth. It also makes key players accountable. United Nations Human Rights say that there is no single and exhaustive definition of good governance, nor is there a delimitation of its scope that commands universal acceptance. The organization said that good governance has been said at various times to encompass full respect of human rights, the rule of law, effective participation, multi-actor partnerships, political pluralism, transparent and accountable processes and institutions, an efficient and effective public sector, legitimacy, access to knowledge, information and education, political empowerment of people, equity, sustainability, and attitudes and values that foster responsibility, solidarity, and tolerance. According to UNDP, United Nations Development Program, good governance is, among other things, participatory, transparent, and accountable. It is also effective and equitable, and it promotes the rule of law. Good governance ensures that political, social, and economic priorities are based on broad consensus in society, and that the voices of poorest and the most vulnerable are heard in the decision-making over the allocation of development resources. Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development also said that good governance encompasses the role of public authorities in establishing the environment in which economic operators function and in determining the distribution of benefits as well as the relationship between the ruler and the ruled. The World Bank said that good governance epitomized by predictable, open and enlightened policy making, a bureaucracy imbued with a professional ethos, an executive arm of government accountable for its actions, and a strong civil society participating in public affairs, and all behaving under the rule of law. United Nations human rights provided the following attributes of good governance: transparency, responsibility, accountability, participation, and responsiveness to the needs of the people. According to goodgovernance.org, the following are characteristics of good governance: accountable, transparent, following the rule of law, responsive, equitable and inclusive, effective and efficient, participatory. Let's see each one of them. Accountable. A country or a government that practices good governance has a system that makes stakeholders accountable, rules and regulations as checks and balances, and everybody is accountable for its decisions, behaviors, and actions. Leaders are also accountable to their constituencies, and this kind of system demonstrates fairness in its dealing. The next one is transparent. A government or an organization which is transparent, its policies, decisions, actions, and interactions are open, and it makes information available to the public. It answers public questions, and it makes its reports available on its website, and newsletters, notice boards, and so on and so forth. And also this kind of government and organization make itself available to answer frequent media inquiries. Follows the rule of law. A government or an organization which is practicing good governance has fair and equitable legal framework, but this legal framework is crafted and endorsed with the full participation of all stakeholders. It ensures people's rights are protected and honored. Its officials are accountable under the law, and this kind of system fights corruption because it is transparent. It doesn't allow corruption to grow and expand and affect the workings of that government and organization. Responsive. A government or an organization which is responsive responds to people's aspirations and needs. Its systems, procedures, and processes are responsive, and it serves the best interests of all stakeholders. And it is very swift to correct errors and mistakes. It learns and grows with the changing world. If an organization or a government is responsive, it is very quick to correct its mistakes and also to make things right if they go wrong. The next one is equitable and inclusive. A government or an organization which is equitable and inclusive recognizes diversity, and all stakeholders have true say, and this kind of system protects and maintains the interests of all its stakeholders in its decision-making process. No one is excluded and marginalized from the decision-making process. It combats disparities and promotes equality. Next is effective and efficient. When a government is effective and efficient, it makes its working effective and efficient. It utilizes its resources wisely and efficiently. It uses latest technologies and innovations, and it also creates agile and proactive system. The next one is participatory. When a government or an organization is participatory, it involves stakeholders directly and or indirectly, and it allows to express their views. It employs various input gathering mechanisms to take the opinions of people from top to down. It also establishes a system at all levels to encourage everyone to involve in the decision-making process. The next question is, what are the benefits of good governance? There are lots of benefits we may enjoy when there is good governance. The first one is conducive atmosphere to live in that kind of country and organization, to work, and also to invest. Increased investment confidence. When we have good governance, investors, both local and foreign direct investment, are increasing because they have confidence in the system. And also, that kind of system creates responsive services and infrastructures. And also, when there is good governance, there is transparent, effective, fair, and stable systems. The next question is, what are the consequences of lack of good governance? There are lots of consequences when we don't have good governance. The first and the most important consequence is corruption. When there is no good governance, corruption is imminent. There will also be abuse of power to benefit a few elites. Few people who are aligned and affiliated with people who are in power are benefiting from the development of that country and organization. Unethical way of doing things is common. When you have government or an organization which doesn't practice and exercise good governance, things are done unethically. Investors and other stakeholders do not trust this kind of government and organization, which means you don't enjoy sustainable development, democracy, and stability when there is no good governance. What I'm saying is that, yes, we need to have democracy, but democracy by itself is nothing if we don't have good governance. That's why democracy is an ongoing process where it embraces good governance to benefit all stakeholders and also create trust among democratic forces and increase confidence of investors. Let me give you some quotations from great people. The former president of India, Pratibha Patil, she said that corruption is the enemy of development and of good governance. It must be got rid of. Both the government and the people at large must come together to achieve these national objectives. Author Patricia Cornwell, she said that, I believe the root of all evil is abuse of power. When there is abuse of power, there is lack of good governance. The former president of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, said that, here is your country. Cherish these natural wonders. Cherish the natural resources. Cherish the history and romance as sacred heritage for your children and your children's children. Don't let selfish men or greedy interests skin your country of its beauty, its rich, or its romance. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize that, yes, we need to have democracy, but one of the reflections of democracy is good governance. And as we discussed, good governance requires the government to be responsive, transparent, accountable, and also govern itself under the rule of law. Let me ask you a question. Is your country, is your organization practice good governance? While you are thinking about it and while you are discussing with your friends, I would like to answer this question for myself. For example, in my case, I'm an Ethiopian. So, does the Ethiopian government practice good governance? No. As we discussed from our episode today, there are consequences of lack of good governance. Here are the things we are experiencing as Ethiopians. There is great corruption in Ethiopia right now. It used to be very evil to think of being corrupt in Ethiopia. But in the last 2 decades, the government in power has promoted corruption from top to down. Now people are thinking twice to be corrupt. But it used to be evil. People don't want to be corrupted because of religious reasons and our cultural reasons. But today, because of lack of good governance, corruption is common in Ethiopia. What about in your country? There is also abuse of power to benefit a few elites. in today's Ethiopia, because of lack of good governance, there are few people who are benefiting from the current system because they are affiliated with the current government, because they are aligned themselves with the current people who are in power. Otherwise, millions of people are starved. Millions of people are constrained, crammed, and they don't have much opportunity to enjoy freedom and also to involve in the decision-making process and benefit from the developmental practices in Ethiopia today. There is an ethical way of doing things in Ethiopia because there is no the rule of law, and there is no accountability, there is no good governance, there is no system that makes people accountable. Investors and other stakeholders do not trust the system in Ethiopia. If you have, for example, hard currency, do you want to go in Ethiopia and invest it? You don't. You don't trust the system, so you don't invest. So lack of good governance is affecting Ethiopia from enjoying both local and foreign direct investment because there is no trust. There is no sustainable development, democracy and stability in Ethiopia because when you don't involve all stakeholders, when you don't make yourself accountable, if you don't also make sure that all stakeholders are benefiting from the developmental efforts in Ethiopia, you have an unstable system. You have no sustainable development. My friend, you need to have contribution to make sure that your country and your organization embraces good governance. What are your roles? Next week, we're going to talk about some good examples of good governance. And next to that, we're going to talk about your roles. Until I see you next week, have a wonderful time. Thank you very much for watching.